The Fox and the Mask. A fox came across a beautiful theatrical mask once used by an actor. Curious about the mask, the fox carefully examined it. Its elegant face was so lifelike that the fox was amazed. However, the fox lifted the mask and discovered that it was hollow. The fox remarked that the mask was beautiful but empty-headed. The story teaches that intelligence is more important than outward appearance. The Fox and the Lion. A fox had never encountered a lion before. When she first saw the lion, she was so terrified that she nearly died of fright. At their second meeting, the fox was still apprehensive, but less frightened than before. By their third meeting, familiarity had given the fox confidence. She boldly approached the lion and spoke to him. The story teaches that repeated experience can overcome fear and make difficult things. The Fox and the Grapes. A hungry fox saw ripe grapes hanging high on a vine. The grapes looked so tempting that he decided to reach them. He leaped with all his strength, but the grapes remained out of reach. After trying many times, the fox became frustrated. Rather than admit defeat, he called the grapes sour and walked away. The story warns us not to disparage something simply because we cannot get it. The Fox and the Crow. A crow found a piece of cheese and perched on a tree branch to eat it. A hungry fox noticed the cheese and coveted it. The clever fox flattered the crow by praising her beauty. He claimed that such a beautiful bird must also have a melodious voice. When the crow opened her beak to sing, the cheese fell and the fox devoured it. The story warns us that flattery can deceive those who are too proud. The Fowler and the Snake. A fowler entered a field hoping to catch some birds. He carefully prepared his bird snares while watching a thrush overhead. Completely oblivious to the ground, he accidentally stepped on a snake. The startled snake gave the fowler a venomous bite. As he grew weak, the fowler realized that his hunting had caused his own downfall. The story warns that people who set traps for others may fall victim to similar dangers. The Fox and the Sick Lion. An old lion was too weak to hunt, so he devised a ruse by pretending to be sick. He lured animals into his cave by asking them to visit him. Whenever an animal entered the cave, the lion devoured it. A wary fox came to visit but remained safely outside. She noticed that all the footprints led into the cave and none came out. The story teaches that wise people observe warning signs before entering danger. The Fox and the Stork. A fox invited a stork to share a meal with him. He served soup in a shallow dish that he could easily lap up. The stork could not reach the soup with her long beak and left hungry. Later, the stork returned the invitation and served food in a narrow-necked jar. The stork ate easily, but the fox could not reach the meal inside the vessel. The story teaches that those who play tricks on others may receive the same treatment in return. The Fox and the Weasel. A lean and hungry fox squeezed through a narrow gap into a bin filled with food. He greedily devoured the food until his belly became large and round. When he tried to leave, he discovered that he was too fat to fit through the opening. The frightened fox cried for help, and a nearby weasel heard him. The weasel advised him to wait without eating until he became thin again. The fox learned that greed and overindulgence often bring trouble. The Fox and the Woodman. A fox pursued by hunters begged a woodman to hide him. The woodman concealed the fox inside his hut. When the hunters arrived, they asked whether he had seen their quarry. He said no, but secretly pointed toward the fox's hiding place. The hunters believed his words and rode away without noticing his gesture. The fox rebuked the woodman for his hypocrisy, because honest words and actions should agree. The fox, the flies, and the hedgehog. An enfeebled fox lay trapped in the mud after being swept across a river. A swarm of flies plagued her and fed on her blood. A hedgehog offered to rid the fox of the insects. The fox refused, saying the flies had already gorged themselves and caused little pain now. She feared that fresh, hungry flies would inevitably replace them and bite even more. The fable teaches that replacing a familiar burden may bring even greater suffering. The frightened hares. A group of timid hares believed that their lives were always in danger. They became so discouraged that they decided to leap into a river. As they dashed toward the water, some frogs on the bank saw them coming. The startled frogs quickly jumped into the pond. One thoughtful hare realized that even the frogs were frightened of them and stopped the group. The hares learned that everyone has fears and that their own misfortunes were not the worst. The frog and the fox. A frog left his native swamp and traveled among the other animals. He proclaimed himself a marvelous doctor who could cure every illness. Many animals gathered around and listened to his impressive boasts. A skeptical fox noticed the frog's lameness and unhealthy complexion. The fox asked why such a skilled doctor could not heal himself. The embarrassed frog had no answer, showing that deeds must support one's words. The frog and the mouse. A mouse asked a frog to carry her to the opposite bank of a stream. The frog secured the mouse to his back and began swimming. Midway across, the treacherous frog deliberately dived beneath the water. The mouse drowned and floated to the surface while still tied to the frog. A passing kite spotted them and swooped down to seize both animals. The frog's cruel scheme caused his own destruction, teaching that planned harm may return to its creator. The frog and the ox. A frog saw an enormous ox standing in a meadow. The frog envied the ox's great size and wanted to become just as large. He took a deep breath and inflated his body. He repeatedly asked the other frogs whether he was as large as the ox. The frog stubbornly continued swelling until he finally burst. The story teaches that ambition requires moderation, because imitating the powerful may lead to ruin. The frogs and the sun. The frogs struggled because the sun's scorching heat was already drying their pond. One day, they learned that the sun was planning to celebrate his marriage. While others might have rejoiced, the frogs lamented the news. They feared that the sun and his bride might have offspring, creating a second sun. The heat of two suns could evaporate the ponds and destroy the frogs' homes. The story warns that one powerful oppressor may create an even worse calamity. The frogs who desired a king. The frogs became dissatisfied with their freedom and asked Zeus to send them a king. Zeus dropped a log into their pond with a tremendous splash. The frogs were terrified at first but soon discovered that the log was harmless and motionless. They mocked King Log and demanded a more active ruler. Zeus sent them a water snake, which began devouring the frogs. When the frogs begged for help, Zeus told them to face the consequences of their foolish request. The ant and the grasshopper. Throughout the summer, a diligent ant gathered and stored grain. Meanwhile, a carefree grasshopper spent the warm days singing and dancing. The ant warned him to prepare for winter, but he ignored her advice. When the harsh winter arrived, snow covered the land and the grasshopper had no food. The hungry grasshopper begged the ant to share her provisions. The story teaches that hard work and foresight help us prepare for difficult times. The Goat and the Vine. A hungry goat entered a vineyard and found a vine covered with fresh leaves. He nibbled the leaves and tender shoots without thinking about the damage. The vine protested and warned the goat to stop eating it. It declared that enough sap would remain to produce grapes. The grapes would become wine poured over the goat when he was sacrificed. The story teaches that those who harm others may bring about their own punishment. The Goose that laid the golden eggs. A poor farmer owned a remarkable goose that laid one golden egg every morning. By selling the eggs, the farmer gradually gained prosperity. However, he became impatient and imagined that the goose contained a large lump of gold. Hoping to obtain his fortune at once, he killed the goose and opened it. To his dismay, the goose was ordinary inside, and no more golden eggs appeared. His short-sighted greed destroyed the steady source of wealth he already possessed. The Hare in Flight. A frightened hare fled across the fields while hunting dogs chased him. Desperate to escape, he leaped from the shore into the sea. The hare believed that the water would provide a safe refuge. However, a Mediterranean shark called a sea dog quickly approached him. The shark seized the hare, who realized that danger surrounded him on both land and sea. His fate illustrates the proverb, "Out of the frying pan into the fire," meaning that escaping one danger may lead to an even worse one. Hercules and the Wagoner. A wagoner drove a heavily laden cart along a muddy country road. The wheels sank deep into the mire, and the cart became stuck. Instead of making an effort, the wagoner appealed to Hercules for help. Hercules told him to put his shoulder to the wheel and urge his oxen forward. The wagoner obeyed, pushed with all his strength, and freed the cart. The story teaches that divine help comes to those who first show initiative and help themselves. The Honest Woodcutter. A poor woodcutter accidentally dropped his only axe into a river. Because the axe was his only means of livelihood, he sat by the water and wept. Hermes took pity on him and brought up a golden axe from the river. The honest woodcutter refused both the golden axe and a silver one because neither belonged to him. When Hermes finally produced the woodcutter's own axe, the man gratefully claimed it. Impressed by his honesty, Hermes rewarded him with all 3 axes. Hawkas and the Oathbreaker. A dishonest man accepted a deposit from his friend but refused to return it. When his friend reminded him of his oath, the man hurried out of town. On the road, a lame traveler revealed that he was Hawkas, the punisher of wicked people. Hawkas said that he returned to the city only once every 30 or 40 years. Feeling safe, the man returned the next morning and falsely swore that he had never received the money. Hawkas appeared at once and punished him, showing that serious wrongdoing may bring immediate justice. The Horse and the Donkey. A merchant traveled with a horse and a heavily loaded donkey. The exhausted donkey asked the horse to carry part of its load. The horse selfishly refused to help and continued walking. Unable to bear the weight, the donkey collapsed and died. The merchant placed all the goods and the donkey's hide on the horse. The horse regretted its decision and learned that neglecting others can create a greater burden. The Horse that Lost its Liberty. A horse and a stag disputed the ownership of a meadow. Unable to defeat the stag, the horse asked a hunter for help. The hunter placed a bridle on the horse and climbed onto its back. Together they drove the stag away, satisfying the horse's desire for vengeance. The hunter found the horse useful and refused to unbridle it afterward. The horse realized that it had lost its liberty by seeking revenge. The flea and the camel. A tiny flea climbed onto a camel and rode on its back all day. The flea imagined that its small weight must be a heavy burden for the camel. At the journey's end, the flea hopped down from the camel's back. It boasted that it was leaving so the camel would not grow tired. The camel replied that it had been completely unaware of its passenger. Embarrassed, the flea learned that foolish people often exaggerate their importance. The jar of blessings. The gods sent humanity a sealed jar filled with countless blessings. A foolish man became overwhelmed by curiosity about what was inside. Unable to restrain himself, he lifted the lid of the jar. All the blessings escaped and flew back to the gods. The man quickly replaced the lid, but only hope remained inside. Hope promised to restore the good things that had flown away one day. The kite and the doves. A flock of doves was terrified by a kite's repeated attacks. The kite offered to protect the doves if they elected him as their king. Desperate for safety, the doves welcomed the kite into their dovecot. Once in power, the kite claimed it was his royal prerogative to seize any dove he wished. The doves realized too late that their protector was actually a predator. They learned that giving an enemy unchecked power can make a dangerous situation worse. The lion and the mouse. A sleeping lion was startled when a tiny mouse ran across him. The lion caught the mouse, but the little creature begged for mercy and promised to help him someday. Amused by the promise, the lion showed clemency and set the mouse free. Sometime later, the lion became entangled in a hunter's net. Hearing the lion's roar, the mouse hurried over and gnawed through the ropes. Once freed, the lion learned that even the smallest friend can repay kindness. Aesop and the ferryman. One day, a ferryman laughed at Aesop and tried to make him look foolish. Aesop replied by telling him a myth about Charybdis, a creature that swallowed the sea. With her first gulp, the sea became lower and the mountains appeared. After her second gulp, many islands rose above the water. Aesop said that her third gulp would dry up the sea and take away the ferryman's livelihood. The lesson is that people who mock someone wiser than themselves may bring trouble upon themselves. The ass and the pig. A hard-working ass lived alongside a pig on a farmer's land. While the ass worked every day, the pig was fattened with barley. The ass envied the pig because it enjoyed plenty of food and an easy life. One day, the farmer sacrificed the pig and prepared it for a feast. When the ass was offered the leftover barley, it wisely refused to eat it. The ass learned that comfort and good fortune can sometimes conceal danger. The ass and his masters. An ass worked for a gardener but complained that he was not fed adequately. Still dissatisfied, he asked Jupiter to give him a different master. Jupiter transferred him to a potter, who made him carry heavy loads. The ass complained again, so Jupiter sent him to work for a tanner. Under his new master, the ass regretted leaving the gardener and the potter. He learned that habitual dissatisfaction can make a bad situation even worse. The ape and the fox. After the lion died, all the animals assembled to choose a new king. They were impressed by the ape's lively capering, so they crowned him king. The fox, who had also wanted the crown, pretended to serve the ape as a loyal courtier. The fox promised the ape some delicious food and led him to a baited trap. When the greedy ape was caught, he accused the fox of treachery. The fox replied that anyone so gullible and greedy was unfit to rule. The ant and the grasshopper. During the warm summer, A carefree grasshopper spent each day singing and dancing. Meanwhile, an industrious ant gathered and stored food for the winter. The grasshopper mocked the ant for working instead of enjoying the sunshine. When the cold winter arrived, the grasshopper became weak and starving. The grasshopper begged the ant for food, but the ant rebuked him for his idleness. The story teaches that hard work and foresight prepare us for difficult times. The ass carrying an image. One day, an ass carried a sacred image through a crowded town. The people bowed and paid homage as the procession passed. The foolish ass mistook the crowd's respect for praise of himself. Filled with conceit, he stopped and refused to move forward. His driver reprimanded him and explained that the crowd was honoring the image, not him. The lesson is that borrowed importance should never be mistaken for personal greatness. The ass in the lion's skin. An ass found a lion's skin and disguised himself by wearing it. He amused himself by terrifying the other animals in the forest. Proud of his success, the ass tried to intimidate a clever fox. The fox seemed frightened until the ass opened his mouth and let out a loud bray. His familiar voice betrayed him, and the fox immediately recognized the donkey. The lesson is that appearances may deceive, but our words often reveal our true nature. The astrologer who fell into a well. One night, an astrologer walked along a road while gazing intently at the stars. Fascinated by the heavens, he failed to notice a deep well in front of him. He stumbled over the edge and fell into the well. Hearing his desperate cries, a passerby came to help him. The rescuer remarked that someone studying the sky should also watch the ground beneath his feet. The lesson is to observe what is near us before speculating about distant things. The Bald Man and the Fly. A bald man was resting when a troublesome fly landed on his head. The fly stung him and escaped before he could catch it. He slapped the spot in an attempt to crush the fly, but only hurt himself. The fly mocked the man for injuring himself while seeking revenge. Still furious, the man declared that he would endure more pain if he could destroy the pest. The story warns that overreacting to a small annoyance may cause greater harm. The Bear and the Travelers. Two companions were traveling together through a wild and lonely forest. When a bear suddenly appeared, one man scrambled into a tree to save himself. He abandoned his friend, who could not climb and had nowhere to escape. The second traveler lay motionless and pretended to be dead, so the bear sniffed him and walked away. When the danger had passed, the first man climbed down and jokingly asked what the bear had whispered. His friend replied that the bear had advised him never to trust someone who deserts a companion in danger. The Beaver. Ancient storytellers claimed that hunters pursued a beaver for something valuable from its body. Sensing the danger, the beaver fled toward the river with the hunters close behind. Realizing that they would not stop, it left behind the object they wanted to distract them. While the hunters gathered the prize, the beaver escaped safely into the water. By giving up something valuable, the animal protected its own survival. The lesson is that self-preservation may require us to sacrifice lesser possessions. The Belly and the Members. One day, the hands and feet complained that they did all the work while the belly did nothing. They believed that the belly selfishly kept all the nourishment for itself. In protest, the members refused to gather, prepare, or carry any food. Before long, the entire body weakened, and every member lost its strength. They realized that the belly received the food and redistributed nourishment throughout the body. The lesson is that every member of a group is interdependent and must cooperate. The birdcatcher and the blackbird. A birdcatcher carefully spread a baited net across a field. An inquisitive blackbird watched him and asked what he was doing. The man claimed that he was laying the foundations of a new city, and then he hid nearby. Trusting his story, the unsuspecting bird flew down to the bait and became trapped. As the birdcatcher approached, the blackbird remarked that such a city would have very few inhabitants. The story warns that credulous listeners may be fooled by appealing lies. The bird in borrowed feathers. A jackdaw found several bright peacock feathers scattered on the ground. It attached the borrowed plumes to its body and admired its elegant appearance. Feeling superior, the bird left its companions and strutted proudly among the peacocks. The peacocks recognized the intruder and removed their feathers from its body. The disheveled jackdaw returned home, but its former companions rejected it for its arrogance. The lesson is that borrowed finery cannot give anyone genuine worth or lasting acceptance. The boy who cried wolf. A young shepherd watched a flock of sheep near his village every day. Feeling bored, he raised a false alarm by shouting that a wolf was attacking the sheep. The villagers rushed to help, but the boy laughed because he had deceived them. By repeating the trick, the boy gradually lost all credibility with the villagers. When a real wolf appeared, the boy desperately called for help, but everyone ignored him. The wolf scattered the sheep, and the boy learned that dishonesty destroys trust. The bulls and the lion. Several bulls grazed peacefully together in a wide green field. Whenever a lion approached, they formed a strong circle and defended one another. Realizing that he could not defeat them together, the lion began to sow distrust among them. The bulls became suspicious of one another and gradually separated. Once they were isolated, the lion was able to overcome them one by one. The lesson is that unity protects friends, while division makes them vulnerable. The cat and the mice. A clever cat hunted the mice in an old barn, so they hid among the rafters. Unable to catch them, the cat devised a trick and hung upside down from a hook. He remained perfectly still, pretending to be dead. The hungry mice peered from their hiding places but remembered how dangerous he was. An experienced mouse warned the others to stay away, no matter how harmless the cat appeared. By remaining cautious, the mice escaped the cat's deception and kept themselves safe. The crab and the fox. A crab lived safely beside the sea, where everything was familiar to it. One day, the crab became dissatisfied and decided to seek a different life. It abandoned the seashore and crawled into a nearby meadow. Far from the water, the crab felt helpless in its unfamiliar surroundings. A hungry fox spotted the defenseless crab and quickly ate it. The fable teaches that those who leave what they know may come to grief. The cock and the jewel. One morning, a hungry cock scratched the ground in search of corn. While digging, he uncovered a bright and precious jewel. The cock recognized that the jewel would be valuable to many people. However, it could not satisfy his hunger or help him survive. He left it behind, preferring a single grain of corn to all the jewels in the world. The fable shows that practical value depends on a person's needs. The cock, the dog and the fox. A cock and a dog set out together on a long journey. When night fell, the cock roosted in a tree while the dog slept beneath it. At dawn, the cock's loud crow attracted a hungry fox. The fox praised the cock's beautiful voice and tried to lure him down. The clever cock told the fox to ask the porter sleeping below to open the door. When the fox approached, the dog chased him away, proving that a trickster can be outwitted. The deer without a heart. An ailing lion asked a cunning fox to bring a deer to his den. The fox flattered the deer and claimed that the lion wished to make it king. When the lion suddenly attacked, the frightened deer narrowly escaped. The fox deceived the deer again, saying that the lion had only wanted to share some royal advice. After the deer returned and was defeated by the lion, the fox secretly devoured its heart. The fox claimed that an animal foolish enough to return to danger could never have possessed good judgment. The dog and its reflection. A hungry dog trotted home with a large piece of meat held firmly in its mouth. As it crossed a narrow bridge, it glanced down at the clear stream below. The dog saw its own reflection but mistook it for another dog carrying an even larger piece. Consumed by greed, it opened its mouth to snatch the other dog's meat. Its own meat immediately fell into the water and vanished beneath the surface. The disappointed dog learned that contentment is wiser than risking what one has for an illusion. The crow and the snake. A famished crow flew across the countryside in search of food. It spotted a snake basking peacefully in the warm sunlight. Believing the sleeping snake was unsuspecting prey, the crow swooped down and seized it. Startled by the attack, the snake quickly retaliated with a venomous bite. As the poison took effect, the crow realized that its lucky discovery had become a fatal misfortune. The fable warns that greed can blind us to deceptive appearances and hidden danger. The crow and the sheep. A troublesome crow perched on the back of a gentle sheep. Annoyed by the unwelcome rider, the sheep reproached the crow for bothering it. The sheep warned that such behavior toward a dog would bring painful consequences. The crow replied that it deliberately troubled only animals too weak to resist. It avoided the powerful and flattered anyone who might cause it harm. The fable exposes cowardly opportunists who bully the vulnerable but yield to the strong. The crow and the pitcher. A parched crow flew across the dry countryside in search of water. At last, it discovered a pitcher containing a small amount of water. The water was beyond reach, and the crow could not tip the heavy vessel over. After thinking carefully, the crow began dropping small pebbles into the pitcher. As more stones fell inside, the water level gradually rose high enough for the crow to drink. The fable teaches that ingenuity and persistence can solve problems that strength alone cannot overcome. The dog and the sheep. A dishonest dog brought a lawsuit against a gentle sheep over a loaf of bread. The innocent sheep denied ever borrowing the alleged loaf from the dog. To support the accusation, a wolf falsely testified that the debt was real. The court accepted the false testimony and ordered the sheep to repay bread it had never received. Sometime later, the sheep discovered the deceitful wolf lying lifeless in a ditch. The sheep concluded that liars may succeed briefly, but they will eventually face the consequences of their dishonesty. The dog and the wolf. A famished wolf met a healthy dog while wandering near a village. The wolf admired the dog's sleek appearance and asked how he lived so well. The dog described his comfortable home and invited the wolf to enjoy the same food and security. As they walked together, the wolf noticed a worn patch of fur around the dog's neck. The dog admitted that his collar sometimes kept him tethered beside the house. The wolf rejected the offer, declaring that liberty was worth more than comfort and a full stomach. The dogs and the lion's skin. A pack of dogs discovered the discarded skin of a once powerful lion. Knowing that the lion could no longer defend itself, The dogs became emboldened and gathered around. They tore at the hide while boasting as if they had defeated the lion themselves. A fox passing nearby ridiculed their sudden display of bravery. The fox observed that a living lion's claws would easily have outmatched the dog's teeth. The fable warns that cowards often attack the fallen only after their power and glory are gone. The dove and the ant. An ant slipped into a stream and was nearly swept away by the current. A dove saw the struggling insect and felt compassion for it. The dove lowered a blade of grass, allowing the ant to climb out safely. Sometime later, the ant noticed a fowler quietly preparing to capture the dove. The ant intervened by biting the man's foot, causing him to move and alert the bird. The dove flew away safely, showing that kindness is often reciprocated when least expected. The eagle and the beetle. A frightened hare, pursued by an eagle, begged a tiny beetle for protection. The beetle offered the hare asylum and pleaded with the eagle to spare it. The eagle arrogantly ignored the beetle's request and captured the hare. Angered by this injustice, the beetle retaliated by repeatedly rolling the eagle's eggs out of its nest. The eagle finally sought refuge with Zeus, but the clever beetle caused even the eggs in his lap to fall. The fable warns that no one is too small to seek retribution when treated unjustly by the powerful. The eagle and the fox. An eagle built its nest high in a tree while a fox made her den below, and they lived as neighbors. While the fox was away, the eagle treacherously carried off one of her cubs to feed its young. The fox returned but was powerless to reach the high nest and could only protest the injustice. Sometime later, the eagle carried a smoldering piece of meat from a nearby altar back to its nest. A hidden ember soon started a fire that engulfed the nest and caused the young eagles to fall. The fable teaches that even the powerful may suffer when their betrayal and cruelty bring consequences. The eagle wounded by an arrow. A self-assured eagle soared above the mountains, believing that no creature could harm it. While grooming, it allowed several feathers from its magnificent plumage to drift to the ground. A hunter collected the feathers and fashioned them onto the end of an arrow. Sometime later, the arrow wounded the eagle and forced it to descend. Looking closely at the arrow, the eagle recognized its own feathers guiding the weapon. It sadly realized that it had contributed to its own misfortune, teaching us that pride may help create our downfall. The farmer and his sons. An aging farmer called his sons together because he wished to give them a final piece of advice. He told them that a treasure was concealed somewhere in the family field. After their father died, the sons dug thoroughly through the soil but found no gold. Their careful digging had cultivated the land, so the crops grew unusually well. The abundant harvest brought them more money than they had expected. At last, they realized that diligent labor was the true treasure their father had promised. The farmer and the stork. A farmer set traps to catch the birds stealing the seeds he had sown. When he checked the traps, he found several birds and a stork. The stork pleaded for mercy because it had not stolen any seeds. The farmer replied that the stork had been caught among thieves. Therefore, it had to suffer the same fate as the guilty birds. The story teaches us that associating with bad companions can bring trouble. The farmer and the viper. One winter day, a farmer found a viper freezing in the snow. Feeling pity for the snake, he decided to save it. He placed the viper inside his coat, close to his bosom. The warmth soon revived the frozen viper. However, the viper bit its kind rescuer, causing him to die. The story warns that kindness to the wicked may be repaid with betrayal. The Fir and the Bramble. A proud fir tree spoke to a small bramble growing beside it. The fir boasted that its strong wood was useful for roofs and houses. It mocked the thorny bush for being worthless. The bramble warned the fir about the axes and saws of woodcutters. Because its wood was valuable, the fir would one day be hewn down. The story teaches that renown often brings dangers that humble people avoid. The Fisherman and His Flute. A fisherman who loved music carried his flute to the seashore. He played a cheerful tune, hoping to charm the fish into dancing. However, the fish remained unresponsive and did not dance. Disappointed, he put down the flute and cast his net into the sea. After he pulled the fish ashore, they flapped about as if they were dancing. The story teaches that those who ignore an opportunity may act too late. The Fisherman and the Little Fish. One day, a fisherman caught a tiny fry with his hook. The little fish begged the fisherman to release it because it was so small. It promised to become a filling meal after it grew larger. However, the fisherman refused and decided to keep the fish. He would not trade his present catch for an uncertain future gain. The story teaches that a small certainty is better than a large promise. The Fly and the Ant. A fly and an ant began a debate about which of them was more important. The fly claimed precedence because it tasted sacred offerings before the gods. It also bragged that it could land on crowned heads and enter grand places. The ant replied that arriving without an invitation was nothing to be proud of. The ant worked for the common good and prepared carefully for winter. The story teaches that hard work is more valuable than vainglory. The Fly in the Soup. A fly hovered over a cooking pot filled with soup. Suddenly, it lost its balance and fell into the soup. The fly struggled but soon realized that it could not escape. Instead of panicking, it calmly reflected on the pleasures it had enjoyed. Having eaten, drunk, and bathed, the fly peacefully accepted its fate. The story teaches us to face unavoidable trouble with equanimity.